Welcome to Libyth. The Taiheiki is, at one level, a book about loyalty. Almost every major figure in it is defined by their relationship to loyalty, whether they embody it, fail it, perform it without feeling it, or discover that the world has made it impossible to practice. The text returns to loyalty the way a tongue returns to a missing tooth, compulsively, painfully, aware that something is gone that should be there. And what makes the Taiheiki's treatment of loyalty so unusual, so much more interesting than simple celebration, is that it is written in a period when loyalty was not working, when the structures that made loyalty meaningful had broken down, when the question was not how to be loyal, but whether loyalty as a practice could survive the conditions it was being asked to operate in. The ideological framework the Taiheiki inherits from Chinese Confucianism conceives of loyalty as a cosmic necessity. It is not simply a social virtue or a political convenience. It is the human reflection of the structure of heaven. The universe is organized in hierarchies, heaven above, earth below, and within the human world, a set of relationships that mirror that cosmic order. Father and son, lord and vassal, ruler and subject. Each of these relationships involves an obligation running in both directions. The superior must be benevolent, the inferior must be loyal. When these relationships function correctly, the cosmos is in order. When they break down, the cosmos registers the breakdown in the form of natural disasters, military defeats, institutional failures, and general catastrophe. The Nanboku-cho period, in this framework, is not just a political crisis. It is a cosmic disorder, a period in which the proper relationships have been systematically violated, and the suffering that results is the universe's response. This framework generates a very specific and demanding conception of what loyalty requires. It is not enough to be loyal when loyalty is easy, when it is rewarded, when the cause you are serving is winning. Loyalty is only loyalty when it is unconditional, when you maintain it even at cost, even in defeat, even in the face of evidence that your Lord is making mistakes and that your fidelity will lead to your destruction. The Taiheiki honors this demanding conception not abstractly, but through the specific figure of Kusunoki Masashige, who is presented as its perfect embodiment. And Kusunoki's perfection is inseparable from his tragedy. He is the most loyal man in the text precisely because his loyalty costs him everything, including his life. But here is where the Taiheiki makes a move that is subtler than it first appears. The text does not endorse blind obedience. It distinguishes, carefully, through the texture of its narrative, between wise loyalty and foolish loyalty, between the vassal who serves his lord's true interests and the vassal who simply does whatever he is told. Kusunoki, before the Battle of Minetagawa, does not simply accept Go-Daigo's command. He argues against it. He explains the strategic situation. He proposes an alternative. He makes the case, rationally and compellingly, for a course of action that would preserve the Southern cause's fighting capacity. Go-Daigo refuses. And then Kusunoki obeys. The obedience comes after the argument, after the attempt to change the decision through legitimate means, after the exhaustion of the space for influence within the relationship. This is not mindless compliance. It is something more considered and more tragic. The recognition that the relationship itself, the loyalty, the obligation, the bond between vassal and lord, has a value that overrides the wisdom of any particular decision within it. Kusunoki is not naive. he knows the battle will be lost. He goes because the alternative, refusing a direct imperial command, would destroy something more fundamental than his life. The Confucian chain of obligation extends upward from Kusunoki through Go-Daigo and beyond. The emperor owes his loyalty to heaven, and heaven's mandate sustains the entire structure. This is why the question of which court is legitimate is not merely a political question. If Go-Daigo's court has heaven's mandate and Taikoji's installed emperor does not, then Kusunoki's loyalty to Go-Daigo is also loyalty to the cosmic order, and his death is not simply a military defeat, but a cosmic injustice, an instance in which the universe has failed to protect what it should protect. The Taiheiki never quite resolves whether this failure means the universe is unjust, or whether it means the Southern Court lacked the mandate the text assumed it had, or whether it means that the relationship between virtue and cosmic reward is simply more complex and more delayed than the framework suggests. It holds the question open. It has to, because the war keeps going, and the side the text loves keeps losing. Set against the framework of Confucian loyalty is the reality of gekokujō, the inversion of hierarchy that the period also produced in abundance. Lowers overcoming uppers was not a slogan in 14th century Japan. It was a description, a way of naming what was visibly happening, the replacement of established authorities by those who were supposed to serve them, the ascent of the previously subordinate to positions of power. The Taiheiki is full of this. Provincial warriors who had served great lords for generations found themselves able to claim independent authority as the central structure collapsed. Local strongmen who had operated in the margins of the formal hierarchy stepped into the vacuum of power. Men who were nobody by the formal categories of the age became military commanders, territorial lords, political actors. The crucial thing to understand about the Taiheiki's treatment of gekokujō is that it does not celebrate this. The text does not regard the inversion of hierarchy as liberation, as the deserving rise of the talented over the undeserving privileged. It regards it as catastrophe. Every instance of lower overcoming upper is, from the text's perspective, a piece of the cosmic disorder that the Nanboku-cho conflict represents. The social order that is being overturned is not simply a convenient arrangement. It is, in the Confucian framework, the human reflection of the structure of heaven. To overturn it is to damage the cosmos itself. Even when the men rising from below are personally admirable, even when the lords they are displacing were personally reprehensible, the structural fact of the inversion is a wound to the world. And yet the text also knows, because it is honest about what it can see, that the social order it defends is the order that is failing, that its collapse is not an accident but a consequence of its own internal logic, its own accumulated contradictions. The Shun system is breaking down. The land-for-service economy is exhausted. The great families that were supposed to maintain stability are competing with each other in ways that make stability impossible. The loyalty that the Confucian framework requires cannot actually be sustained in the material conditions of the age. And so the text is left in a position of profound structural irony. It was written to honor loyalty, to preserve the memory of those who were loyal, to record the values that the age was destroying. And the very act of doing so is also a record of those values' failure, a chronicle of how completely the world the text loved had come apart. This irony reaches its sharpest point in the figure of Ashikaga Taikoji. Taikoji is in many ways the anti-Kusunoki, The man who refuses to be bound by the demands of loyalty when loyalty conflicts with his judgment about what the situation requires. He allied with Go-Daigo when Go-Daigo was useful. He turned against Go-Daigo when Go-Daigo became an obstacle. He did this not from personal malice. The text does not give him personal malice, but from a clear-eyed assessment of what the situation demanded and what his interests required. He is the pragmatist in a text that worships the principled. He is the survivor in a text that honors the dead. And he won. His shogunate lasted for over 2 centuries. His line governed Japan through one of its most culturally productive periods. The Taiheiki hates him for what he did and cannot quite argue that what he did was wrong. The structural irony goes further still. Gekokujō, the inversion of hierarchy that the text deplores, is also what made Go-Daigo's restoration possible. The warriors who joined the imperial cause and overthrew the Hojo were not simply expressing loyalty to the throne. Many of them were expressing dissatisfaction with the existing system, pursuing their own interests, seizing an opportunity that the political crisis had created. Go-Daigo used these men, needed these men, and in using them, endorsed the very dynamic that his ideal of imperial rule was supposed to correct. The Kenmu restoration failed partly because it tried to return to a model of centralized imperial authority in a world where power had already dispersed to precisely those provincial warriors whose energy had made the restoration possible. Go-Daigo tried to put the Gekokujō genie back in the bottle, and the genie declined to return. The Taiheiki does not draw this conclusion explicitly. It does not say, the restoration was doomed by its own contradictions. But it shows you the contradictions. It shows you the warriors who fought for Go-Daigo and then felt betrayed by his governance. It shows you the impossibility of rebuilding centralized authority in a world where authority had already fragmented beyond retrieval. And it does this while honoring the loyalty of men like Kusunoki, who served a project they must have understood, at some level, was structurally impossible. The loyalty is real, and the impossibility is real, and both are true at once. And the Taiheiki is large enough to hold both without resolving them into each other. The question the text leaves you with is not whether Kusunoki was right to be loyal. The text is clear that he was. The question is what his rightness accomplished, whether a loyalty that leads to death and defeat and the failure of the cause it was meant to serve is still a moral achievement, and if so, what kind of achievement it is and what it means. The Taiheiki's answer, insofar as it has one, is that the value of loyalty is not reducible to its outcomes. A man who is loyal to the right cause and loses is still a better man than a man who is loyal to the winning cause and wins. And the world that cannot protect its best men is worse, not better, for their death. This is cold comfort. The Taiheiki knows it is cold comfort. It offers it anyway. That's all for today on Libyth. One new book every week. At least we try.